So this is the second section of part 2 of 4 videos on Excel. And what we're going to do is we're going to next go and copy functions. We're going to scroll over. Didn't need to add a sheet. Let me get rid of it. We're going to scroll over until we get to the Linton worksheet. And here you'll see in the Linton worksheet we don't have all the sums added up. And so we want to add up all these different columns. We're going to do that by hitting the auto sum button here. You'll notice when we do that, it doesn't select this $150 up here. That's because there's a gap between the first number here. So if we left click here and drag it up, we'll now have that full column of C5 through C9, which we want. We hit enter. We're going to click back on it. We're going to hold down the left mouse button and drag that over to fill handle it. And now we have the total sum for each column. When I double click on it, I can see it added up to the total column there, which is what we wanted to do. See what I just did. See, that's why you don't click anywhere until you hit escape. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is what's called a 3D reference. If we go to the Artist Sales Summaries worksheet, you can see here that it says SKU. SKU. This stands for Stock Keeping Unit. And on each artist sales summary sheet, on O14, we see that it has a total count of SKU numbers. We want that for that artist. We want the total amount from each worksheet put here. And of course, we want to use cell reference. So we're going to start by hitting an equal sign. And we'll start typing in the word sum. And we'll double click on it. And now what that's done is that's allowed us to prepare to select the SKUs from each of the next worksheets. So first we're going to click on the Anders worksheet. We're going to hold down the shift key and we're going to select everything down to Zhang. That means every single one of those worksheets are now bolded because every single one of those worksheets numbers are going to be added together. And all we have to do is click right here on O14, and it reads O14 for all those worksheets. When we hit enter, it takes us back to the original sales worksheet, and it says 40 because there are 40 SKU numbers there. If you didn't delete the rows and columns that we created in the Cohen sheet, I think it was a Cohen sheet, anyway, if you didn't delete those, then you'll be off a couple of numbers because that created new rows and columns and it changed where your SKU number was at. So make sure that you followed all the process to this point so that your numbers are correct. Now, the next thing we want to do is do what's called an absolute reference. We're going to go to the FY15 online sales worksheet. Of course, we're going to be back and forth doing all kinds of stuff to learn how to do things right. Now, first off, a relative reference. When we did the sum, this is called a relative reference because it can change. The computer will read it differently for each thing. To show you this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click right here on C22 and I'm going to copy that over here to D22, copy and paste it, and you'll notice that it says 0. Well, let's investigate why. I'm going to hit escape so that it gets rid of the marquee. I'm going to double click in here and you'll notice that it selected the next column over because relative means that it's relative to what it did before, and so it changes it. So we don't want it to change. So what we're going to do next, I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to go back here to this and double click on it, and we don't want any of this to change. So we're going to put our cursor right in between E and 5, and we're going to hit F4, and it does these dollar signs in between, before the E and between the E and the 5. And that is absolute. What that means is it will always read that value. And then here we'll also do that in between the E and 19, hit F4, and there's dollar signs there. We'll hit enter. Those are now absolute. So when I copy and I paste it, I'm going to paste it here, it gives me the same value. So let's investigate why. You hit escape and double click in there, and you can see now that since these are absolute, it means it will always read those values according to the equations in this box, no matter where I put that equation. Okay? And so those are absolute values. Now, absolute values are useful, and we're going to identify why here in just a second. So what we want to do is we want to put the tax in, okay, the sales tax. Over here in L15, this is the tax rate, or the sales tax rate. And right here is the price of each of those items. So we want to be able to have that calculate for us in here. So we're going to click in F5. We'll hit an equal sign. And we're going to be multiplying this value here. So we'll click in E5. And we'll hit the asterisk for times. And then we're going to click over here on the tax rate. Now we want the tax rate to be absolute. We don't want E5 to be absolute because we want it to change for each of these rows. But we want L15 to be the only thing it reads when it comes to calculating the tax rate. So we're going to click in between the L and the 5, hit F4, and then hit enter. And now that's an absolute function. So that when I panhandle this down, it now will calculate individually for each one of those. Let's see how it looks when I double click on any one of these. Notice that it changed from E5 to E9, but L15 remains the same, which we needed it to do in order to calculate the tax correctly. And so that's when absolute values become necessary. I hit escape to get off of that. So that was not panhandle, bill handle. It said panhandle. It's a totally different thing. Now we're going to learn to do what's called the if function. This is a conditional statement. If this is true, then something else will occur. So we want to create an if situation because we have here a shipping surcharge. That shipping surcharge is dependent on whether or not the painting is oversized or not. So we're going to click right here in this section. We're going to start by typing an equal sign, and we're going to go up to our formulas tab and click on the logic button and select if. Now, with the if function, we're going to do a logical test here. If in D5 it's a yes, which would happen here, not in D5, but if it's a yes, we want it to calculate the surcharge, which is percentages here. So the way we'll do that is we'll type in D5 equals, and then in parentheses we need to type in yes, with only capital Y and quote and our parentheses. So this is the logical statement, if this. Okay? If D5 is equal to yes, which it's saying it's false because D5 is not a yes, okay? So if it's true, we want it to calculate. We're going to click here on E5, that times, we want it to read the surcharge percentage over here in L16, so we'll click there. Now L16 needs to be permanent, right? So it's an absolute function. We'll hit F4 in between those. And then now it's going to change the E5 each time to the new row, but it will always multiply by L16. Now if it's false, we don't want it to do anything, so we'll put 0 there, so it calculates 0. We click OK, and now we got 0. Because it was false that this is a yes. We can now fill handle this down, and you can see it charges 99 where it's a yes. It charged 117 where it's a yes. And everywhere where there's a yes, it charges the surcharge. And so that's how we can do what's called an if function. So once again, what this does is if we have anything that we change in here, for example, this one becomes a yes, then it will automatically change it to charge it, right? I'm going to click undo because I don't want it to charge it, but there we have it. Now save your changes, and this concludes the second section of part 2 of the Excel lessons.